It's a vivid memory, the first time that I saw the Nintendo 64.
It was Super Mario, a winter level, and there was a penguin. Store displays in general are designed to draw attention, but at that age, they're hard to distinguish from a shrine. I guess it would have been around 1996, so I would have been 6. And while I can't remember what was on the shelves, I can still step right back into that feeling. This wasn't just a toy or some simple amusement, it was otherworldly. If my reaction sounds old-fashioned, it's because I was, and things like this weren't for me. So if this project was just about capturing that childhood magic, it would have been simple enough. But like most of my projects, the reality is more complicated. The shorter answer is that I've built a portable game system. It has a color CRT screen and is powered by the Switch 2, which docks into the front like a VCR. Now, CRTs can shock you if handled improperly, and it's tricky to capture how good they look with a camera. But beyond that, it's a pretty straightforward idea.
The key word being idea.
I'm excited to hear what you're up to. It sounds like a fun project. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but like...
This is Shank, and he's built some incredible gaming devices over on his channel, Shank Mods. He also owns the world's largest CRT television, so he would know that what I'm about to attempt is not going to be easy.
Don't get me wrong, there have been CRT portables before.
I can think of at least 2 others that you can find on YouTube, but these use black and white tubes, which are often much more compact than color tubes, plus these were at a right angle.
What's the plan?
So I have a Sony Watchman, the Sony Watchman Color.
Oh my gosh, that one, yeah.
Back in the 90s, this was a pretty special device. Most small TVs back then were either black and white or early LCDs, which just looked awful. But this is an actual portable color CRT television, a true miniature version of what many of us grew up with. But even though it was kind of compact, it wasn't exactly simple on the inside. And no matter how much wisdom Shank shared with me regarding the technical subtleties of CRTs and game systems and, stuff, at the end of the day, he was still 1,000 miles away, and I was stuck here having to figure out what to do with this bulky pile of circuit boards.
Now, a fair question to ask at this point is why? Why do this? I mean, 20 years ago, flat screens came and left these heavy glass relics where they belong, in the past, right?
I mean, for years, you couldn't get rid of them. You even had to pay money to have them recycled. But over the last few years, the prices have started to go up. I got most of mine for free, but why do I even choose to use them?
We lost a lot when we moved to LCD screens. We lost a lot of people.
This is Seamus Blackley. He created the Xbox.
Cathode ray tube is emissive, meaning that when it draws a pixel, it's actually emitting light from that pixel. LCD screens, and even to some extent OLED, are subtractive displays. They're starting with white and removing everything you don't want besides white. And that is not as fun to look at.
The images that you see are being produced in a totally different way, and that's a big deal when you remember that all the old games were designed on these TVs. They look right on a CRT, an argument made without nostalgia.
Although, if you're taking the time to play a 30-year-old game, nostalgia matters too. There's just not enough time to cover all the technological reasons why you might want to play on a CRT, but I had decided that my game system had to have one.
Which meant putting the guts of this television inside of a custom case with a bunch of other parts. And I had just had my first breakthrough. We are running this guy here, got this guy here, and they're separated now by cables. And it works! To save space, the circuit boards were designed to plug into each other at right angles, and I was relieved to see that the TV still worked with these wire extensions. Look at that, that's working, that's awesome. I mean, it looks really cool. This is so awesome, it means I can move the circuit boards around as I need to move them around. This is great. A portable game system needs controllers, batteries, some kind of computer to run the games, and all of them fitting nice and snug within the perfectly designed retro case.
Okay, so since this was back in January, I had never really designed anything with 3D design software. All my old projects were done with two-dimensional sketches that were cut on my CNC machine, so I was clumsy.
And this was no easy task. Almost all gaming handhelds are built on the premise that the screen will be thin, and our boy is thick. And I didn't just have to figure out how to make it usable, it had to look good.
And I didn't just have to figure out how to make it look good, I had to figure out how to make it look like it belonged in the 90s.
I needed to take all these existing aesthetics and CRT constraints, blend them up, and spit out as many derivations as possible. So I put the relevant words into a generative image model, which was predictably disturbing. I loved the look of some of the concepts, but so many of these were not deep enough to handle the tube in cathode ray tube. But one of them finally stood out, and at a 45-degree angle.
This angle is what I'd been missing. A gaming device has to be usable by both your eyes and your hands, and this just isn't practical.
But now the length of the tube would be concealed inside the body, with controllers that were grabbable while you looked at the screen.
Things were really starting to look up. Then I hit a snag.
If you saw my last video about the Nerf Mini Nuke and Bouncing Betty, you know that I severely herniated a disc in my back and could barely function for months.
I'm thankfully doing a lot better, and I was even able to go to open source. For now, I'm just going to write a brief update in the description below and offer my sincerest of thanks to everybody who offered such amazing support.
The point is that the simplicity of the Nerf balls made them easier for someone in pain and new to 3D design, and by the time that I dropped that last nuke, my skills had grown tremendously, and I was ready to get my gaming hands dirty again. It's like, you know, before there were all these barriers between my imagination and reality, and now it's like it just whoosh. When I started it, I could barely put something together. I didn't know the tool very well. And now, just in this morning, taking my old design and being like, ooh, I wonder what it's gonna be like. I've whipped it into something that's like exactly what I was, it's like, I might even print like a piece of a shell this morning. I started with the faceplate to check the color scheme and the fit, but the real challenge would be the main body. I had a lot of boards to fit inside of it, so I eventually printed a rough shell to see how the pieces might fit. You know, it's kind of big for a portable console. I had designed the thickness to be about the maximum that my hand could hold, but the pieces just weren't fitting. Never mind all the other components. I'd need to go thicker. But you need to be able to grab this thing to use the controllers, meaning the hands would have to stay put and the design would have to morph to fit around them, which is a convoluted way of saying handles. I've never 3D printed an ergonomic device before. This has to both be aesthetic and ergonomic, and it has to just feel right. And that's new to me. The grips felt good, but it was still a tight fit for the boards, and now I had started looking at controllers as well, and it's just tough having to accommodate someone else's bulky circuit boards.
The circuit board was large because it was given nepotistically to a circuit board manufacturer that was run by a relative of somebody at Microsoft, and it came back the size of a fucking dinner plate.
If you've heard of the Duke, the original Xbox controller, then this might make sense to hear.
Before I could catch this, Denise was designing, industrial design around this enormous circuit board that could have been a quarter the size.
That's right. Even the greatest of projects face the most ridiculous of constraints.
So who would I be to complain? Things were starting to fit as if I'd intended them to, so I decided to add the brains of the operation, the Switch 2. Or, well, a 3D printed placeholder. You see, I hadn't bought the Switch 2 yet. Which might not have been a big deal, but I didn't even know if this cheap USB N64 controller would work on it. I didn't even know if the N64 controller would work at all. So I'm stuck at a bit of a crossroads with the controllers. Everything is done on a ramp because it's a rounded surface. All the depths are different. But there's another dimension that doesn't need to be there for my design. This was incredibly tedious since I had to reverse engineer every depth and width and height for each button interface and mounting piece, not to mention that this controller was a single circuit board, meaning it would have to be split and then have wires connecting each trace, which is also incredibly tedious. Not to mention, the N64 only has one joystick. What if I wanted to play a game from a more modern system like the GameCube? There's all this stuff that I'm doing now that I'm like, oh, am I just wasting my time?
In order to save time and have greater reliability, I sought and found an option with 2 circuit boards.
2 joysticks, Nintendo styling, and a track record of use with the Switch 1. Some GameCube Joy-Cons. Unlike the N64, these controller buttons were mounted on a flat surface, which made reverse engineering much simpler, though still incredibly time-consuming to get just right.
But I was now reaching a point where I couldn't really make progress without knowing for sure that they would work.
And Shank had given me the great idea to make the Switch 2 dock like a VCR.
But without spending the $500 for my own actual unit, I'd never know if it fit.
My video budget could begrudgingly handle the purchase, but as I drove home from the store with it, It was my psyche that was struggling.
This is a brand new Nintendo console at the time of its release. I've never done that before. I've never owned a brand new name brand console when it came out, or even close to when it came out.
Now, I do own a lot of video games, but each of these is a story of patience. These were virtual worlds cast aside once their inhabitants became numb to the magic. Like most of the things I own, these were all purchased used. They were good deals. They were buried treasure. The Switch 2 wasn't.
This is weird for me. The truth is that no medieval peasant was ever pissed off that they weren't able to get a Switch 2 on its release date, because they were mostly just trying not to get dysentery. Growing up and seeing kids screaming because their parents didn't hand them their expensive game system quickly enough. Where for me, we didn't have that. This isn't just some mental trickery to get a Switch 2. Like, I don't want a Switch 2.
These are complicated feelings, and like all things, it probably traces back to childhood.
Growing up, my dad only let me spend 1 hour of time at the computer, and that was per week. Now, there's a very good explanation as to why.
Well, for better or worse, I now had my first newly released brand new console, but instead of playing it like a normal person, I just started tearing apart the dock.
We can't just shove the Switch 2 into a box or connect a simple video cable between it and the tube TV. It needs its dock to communicate the video information properly.
So I had to figure out how to also shove the dock into the box, which meant stripping it down to the bare essentials.
That's what we wanted. This.
The dock connects to the Switch 2's bottom USB-C connector via this short, awkward ribbon cable. That means that the board has to be right next to the bottom of the Switch inside the case. Unless, of course, it works with a cable extension, and it did.
Because I know these docks are temperamental, and I know that Switch only recognizes its dock, and some third-party docks have had issues, so the fact that I can use an extension cable is perfect. It's perfect. Awesome. I don't have to have it right there. Ugh.
The extension connects the dock PCB to the new docking assembly, with the Switch 2 sliding into place with a satisfying click after a few test prints.
Everything was progressing really nicely. It'd be a shame if anything went wrong. It's Saturday morning and it's 6:45 a.m. and I'm trying to do a benchtop test. Problem is that it's not turning on.
The TV was producing a weird image and would eventually shut down altogether.
I've got so many things to do, and it's a giant house of cards. They're all interconnected, and I'm stuck.
It's easy to forget that these TV components are almost as old as I am, and after years of being in one position, I was now asking them to bend over backwards, putting them in and out of case after case, and extending their wires far beyond their original design. Now, I did have a backup TV, a Memorex, with great picture that I had found for a good deal, but it had a bigger tube and bigger circuit board, meaning that if I used it, everything would have to change. Thankfully, I realized that the Sony had a loose connection somewhere in the wire extensions, and by taking them away, I was able to get it all working again. For now.
Oh, look at that. That's a Nintendo Switch 2.
The Switch was now running through the dock and then through an HDMI to composite converter and into the TV. And it was awesome. But there was one caveat.
I think it's stretching everything. This composite converter took the 16:9 aspect ratio of the Switch 2 and then squished it into a 4:3 box.
Which wouldn't be such a big deal, except when playing 4:3 games on their N64 emulator, it didn't stretch them back the other way, which meant there were big borders on the sides. What's worse, through hours of searching, I couldn't find a composite converter with screen ratio adjusters. I did have an HDMI to RF converter that could make adjustments, but next to composite, it did not look very good.
I had been reticent to use multiple adapters because I didn't want to introduce more latency, which is the gap between when you push a button and when the action shows up on screen.
But Shank said that since HDMI to VGA is a non-scaling conversion, it shouldn't introduce more latency, and then I could use a VGA to composite converter that did have adjusters.
Now, one of the problems with connecting anything together inside this case is the size of the cables. Yes, you can get short cables, but they often have bulky strain reliefs, and inside this packed case, every inch counts.
Right-angle USB-C connectors were a big help. But the champ was this HDMI connector that I found, which allowed me to put the HDMI converter directly below the dock board, though it came at a price. It turns out that the HDMI converter is producing audio glitches. It seemed like everywhere I turned there were more issues and limitations, which is a bad thing, right?
I think the role of limitation in any creative exercise is absolutely critical. If you have unlimited funds, unlimited time, unlimited technology, you'll find you actually can make nothing.
Jordan Weisman created MechWarrior.
You need constraints to be able to design well, and I think some of the most brilliant designs in video games and in tabletop games come from the most severe constraints.
On some level, I think we all know this to be true. It's why major streaming platforms sometimes struggle to rival the viewership of YouTube videos, why indie games are exploding, but AAA titles can sometimes feel like triple crap.
In embracing these limitations, I found creative solutions. Shielding the HDMI connector with aluminum tape removed the noise, and cutting and soldering the VGA connector wires directly between the converter boards allowed me to pack all of these circuits neatly into the corner of the case. And suddenly, from switch to extender to dock to converter to audio to TV, everything was communicating.
It was working. For now. Now, we all know that with progress, we sometimes lose something, like headphone jacks in phones, or good sound from a TV.
You might not believe that we ever had it, but my massive CRT from 2003 has some of the best built-in sound I've ever heard, and it makes sense. Sound, unlike video, definitely needs space. The size and shape of the enclosure dramatically affects the sound of the speaker that it's mounted to. And then there's the speaker itself. So I know what I want to do. I want to use the speakers out of an iMac G3. I remember my brother and I found one of those at a thrift store once, and we took out the little speaker enclosures, and I was amazed at the level of sound that they produced. Now, all of the units that I could find had either had their speakers replaced with who knows what, or their speakers were blown. So I searched the forums and found a top recommended replacement that wasn't particularly cheap, but at this point, I was all in. With portable devices, you just sort of accept that there's going to be this sacrifice, that it's like they're just not going to have that good a sound. Well, I want it to have good sound.
I think that sound is important to me because, well, I do have a music degree, but even before college, I spent a lot of time playing with speakers, taking them apart and modifying them and mounting them and even making my own out of paper. I mean, what else was I going to do? Sit at the computer?
I have my own thoughts about the hour of computer, but I'd really love to know, why did you do it?
Well, the internet was just really coming on strong then. And I was suspicious about, some of the stuff that was on the internet, but also I didn't want you guys to become addicted to it. Real life was happening all around. I wanted you to be able to connect with friends in real life. I wanted to really limit it while you were in that developmental stage. And then knowing that when you got older, you'd make your own decisions.
As a kid, my entertainment limitations were paired with budgetary ones as well. So I grew up in goodwill, finding what I could, when I could, and making something out of it. It was there we found the iMac and the speakers within. And now, years later, my game system had speakers that brought depth to the sounds of nostalgia. Now, one thing that I've neglected to mention is a sort of pact that I made with myself. I will probably eventually play my Switch 2 in its original configuration, just like any normal person.
But not until after this video is done. So I'm sitting on the couch right now with my wife. I'm sitting here and I was just thinking, now would be a perfect time. Grab that Switch 2, play some games. But no. After I got over the initial shame of buying this thing brand new, it had started to look more and more tempting. It's so convenient, so streamlined. What a great way to de-stress. Not that I had excessive stress. Fun stuff. Fun stuff. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just a guy in his basement. I don't know what I'm doing. Well, it finally happened. Maybe it was the repeated moving, maybe a wire got loose, maybe it was these extensions, or the high voltage neck extender I had meticulously designed and printed. The tube was dying. Actually, it was dead. You could smell it when it was turned on.
I could buy another Watchman on eBay, but they were quite pricey, and I wasn't sure what had caused this problem, so it might just happen again.
I still had that Memorex that had the great picture, but it was big, and the tube was longer than the Sony. Compounding the pressure were all the unfinished things I still needed to design, like proper shoulder buttons or a working battery system that would properly communicate with the dock while powering everything else.
I didn't trust buying another Sony, but something else would have a different layout. And the placement of everything was built around the specifics of the Sony.
Inside this circuitously circuited gridlock, move one piece and the whole layout might have to be rearranged. I wish I could say I wanted to give up, that I'd even consider pretending that this whole project never existed and that some game consolation would be a fitting reward for my efforts. But I knew what I wanted, and it was greater than just building this thing.
Sometimes it was me crying in my car on the way home and I was the only guy continuing with it. And that was necessary for it to get over the line. And I took that one. And that's mine.
I wanted a CRT, but I also wanted to know why I wanted a CRT.
I think the more that you provide, the less the imagination that they provide, the less meaningful the experience can become. The CRT, with its raster building line by line, left places for your imagination to fill it in. You up-resed it as it went. And nowadays, right, we're in such high fidelity that your imagination is constrained by the imagery that's being presented to you. That doesn't mean that it doesn't look beautiful and blow you away. It does. But I also wonder how much it sticks with you because of that.
By a stroke of luck, I found a basically new GE Spacemaker, and a little research revealed it had a single small circuit board. I was excited and scared.
That's it. Look at it. It's tiny. How can that be it?
It was a good question, but I was already starting to see the answer.
So here's my dilemma. The quality of image between this guy with the single board and then this Memorex. This thing is a piece of crap in comparison. I don't think I can in good conscience put this guy in my thing. It bothers me. And you guys would never know if I didn't say something. Some of you would, but you would still watch the video. Why do I even care? It's not good enough. This is the image I want. This is what I have to make happen, and it's gonna take me way longer.
The Memorex board was going to disrupt the locations of a lot of stuff inside the case, but it was done. Thankfully, the split boards were actually manufactured as one board before being bent along their seam, so I flattened them back out. I also ditched the neck extender because I wasn't sure if it was causing issues. I was just gonna make the neck board fit.
Yes, it would be longer, but this thing was never really gonna be that small. You were never gonna be able to play it without support, but is that so bad?
The Switch can be held inches from your eyes, laying down in perfect isolation, but mine has to sit on your lap, with room for others to see if they sat next to you.
We used to huddle around the tube like a campfire, and we used to experience the stories together.
We used to say things like Legend of Zelda is a game that the community plays, right? And I saw it with my kids. They would go to each other's houses and they would, oh, I know how to beat that boss. I'll go to your house to do that. It's not just how you play a game, but how you socialize about that game.
Do you think that in that context, the internet bandwidth has increased, therefore the actual physical bandwidth has diminished or atrophied?
I totally think that's true. I was seeing in my kids that a play date now had become, you go to your house and I'll go to mine and I'll meet you online. To me, that's kind of sad because person-to-person interaction is still the highest form of rewarding human contact.
I guess the size was justified, so I pressed on. The stack of video boards went to the other corner, and I found a place for the 100-watt power bank on the other side. After dozens of test prints, I finally had a base plate that was basically done, and I started carefully mounting the components inside it piece by piece.
This is so cool, having this guy basically done. Look at it. It's so organized. All the little buttons here. The top is printing as we speak.
This is where my endless hours spent designing and redesigning really paid off. Every little detail, every mounting surface, every hole, meticulously measured and revised till it all fit just so. Months of work, made real and sitting in front of me, only needing the components to be plugged into their slots. The dock, converters, and audio board all went into the corner, along with a couple fans to keep it all cool. The dock USB-C extension connected the board to the new dock chassis. The speakers were mounted and closed up inside their new enclosure, and the rumble motors slid snugly into their holders. My printed speaker covers popped into their slots, and then the guy attached firmly to the mistake.
So without thinking, I just plugged in the USB to test my circuits.
The converter board, fans, and controllers all ran off of 5 volts, and were all connected to the same USB board with adjustable voltage.
And I didn't think to check that the dip switches were correct, because why would they be correct? And I plugged it in and saw smoke and smelled burning, which means I probably fried them all.
It's because they all got 12 instead of 5 volts. Shameful, really, that this had to happen so close to the finish line, but there's no use in complaining about the cost of ordering another converter and another controller.
And removing, and rewiring, and reinstalling all of them. So instead, please just let me at least pay for it by telling you a little story. 3 years ago, I bought my Henson razor, and now for the first time, they're the sponsor of this video. Now, I had owned a few vintage single blade razors before, and I eventually learned with my sensitive skin that the way that those old ones hold the blade is not ideal.
Those single blade designs and even modern cartridges can have issues with loosely held blades bouncing around on your face.
It sucked because otherwise, single blade razors are great. The only thing that they consume are the inexpensive blades, and those are razor thin, recyclable, and they're not proprietary.
That's why I was so excited when I learned about the Henson razor. They precision machine the handle with tolerances so tight that the blade extends only 0.0013 inches past the shave plane. Now, I might have a giant CNC machine, but their machines have made parts for the International Space Station. Their aluminum bodies are finished in a variety of coatings, and mine has held up incredibly well over the years, even after being dropped.
Shaving can be way better. Check out the link in the description below and use code JOELCREATES to get 100 free blades with the purchase of a razor. Just make sure that the blades are in the cart with the razor when you enter the coupon code for it to work properly. Thanks, Henson. Okay, at this point, there were no more major mess-ups. Things were actually really coming together.
I got the tube mounted on its faceplate, attached the hood, which now had a sexy curve to it, and mounted it to the body, along with all the various circuits and wires. I wanted this thing to be serviceable, so that I could take it apart if I needed to. So I tried to split the circuits between the top and bottom half in a way that made sense, in a way that allowed them to be disconnected from each other without too much work.
I just tentatively put it together, don't have the shoulder buttons, but I'm basically ready to test. Gotta know, does it turn on? Does it connect? Does it boot up? Does it fry itself?
There were lots of little finicky things, like I realized that the dock ribbon cable had gotten disconnected.
We're close. We're getting close.
Or there was noise in the video signal, which I eventually fixed with ferrite beads on the video cable. After trying many different styles and orientations, I finally designed a shoulder button grip setup that felt pretty natural to use. These had a couple limit switches that were bent with some 3D printed pads for your fingers. I designed them to be removable, so if I ever make a better grip, or if I want to change colors or anything, I can easily swap them out. The power bank was a combination of 2 power bank boards to have both charging and at least a 60-watt discharge for the dock to work, but these power banks have weird measuring of both input and output that isn't just based on voltage, so they didn't like being charged and discharged through separate boards, and eventually I just had to plug the 60-watt line into the charge input on the back. Am I thrilled with it? No, but you know, it works, and this crowded cluster of pieces manufactured as far as 40 years apart were now decently organized inside of a bespoke and semi-professional looking enclosure that not only fit together, but you know what? It was working. It was actually freaking working. What? The last problem that needed solving was not so much a problem, but a lingering question that didn't feel quite answered.
Are legacy technologies like vinyl only popular because of nostalgia, or have we left something behind?
You have a group of people who are interested in things because of nostalgia. And that's an easy story to write for lazy writers. But it's more complicated than that. You could go and you could play the original vinyl track of I Feel Love from Donna Summer, and you will see the birth of electronic music in that track. The craftsmanship of that, the care that had to be taken to produce an electronic music track in the early 70s was extraordinary. Later generations can reproduce it as retro, but it's careless. You can do it easily. There are tools that make it trivial to do, and every moment of every part of it is not sweated over, so you do lose something.
We are surrounded by technology that has made our lives convenient, but convenience can be antithetical to excellence.
In a world where you have fewer constraints, you're not forced to excel. You have to decide to do it, and that's a difference.
I don't know if this thing is excellent. Not everything was done the hard way. Sometimes I took the shortcut. but it was also a significant personal challenge. And there's definitely something special about it.
You know, it's not perfect, it's not the most portable thing in the world, but I don't know how you can look at this and not smile. Like a really big smile. Wow. I've lost all objectivity. Is this cool? I have no, I don't know. I have been eating and sleeping and breathing this for like, I don't know, 2.5 months straight now. I don't know what this is anymore. I don't want to talk to a camera right now. I don't really want to figure anything out. I just kind of want to play it. I just kind of want to play it.
Now, whether it's in spite of or specifically because of its flaws, this thing is pretty great to play.
The screen size is good. It's not so small that it forces you to strain, except for reading text, but it's not so big that it limits your imagination.
It's like a glowing window into the past. Perfect for nostalgia. Way bigger than what we had portably in the 90s, but nowhere near as indulgent as this thing.
It's smooth too. CRTs had great refresh rates, unlike their early LCD counterparts, and games like F-Zero look buttery smooth and vibrant. There is some latency, and I think it's from the controllers mostly. It's super playable, but the purists would probably notice it. The sound has significantly more depth than the Switch 2, and the only thing it's missing is a bit more treble. I tried installing an equalizer circuit, but it broke after just a couple uses, and I didn't want to complicate things with finicky parts. And as far as headphones, you can always use Bluetooth, or just use the built-in headphone jack on the Switch 2 itself. The controls are good, but some of the buttons are a bit high for smaller hands. On the plus side, you can use whatever controller you want wirelessly. One of the coolest uses of this device is to sit on a couch with someone and give them the Joy-Cons for awesome multiplayer action that will have your eyes straining just as much as when you were a kid.
It's surprisingly easy to get lost in it.
So have you forgotten that you're holding a giant thing on your lap?
Yes.
You just kind of get pulled into the game, right?
Exactly, yeah, that's what happens.
This looks phenomenal.
Doesn't it look good?
It looks like it's so good. Like it's crisp, it's clean, but you still really get that.
You've got an enemy on your tail. Use the
No way. There's a lot more that I could say about this project and all the things that I think that it represents, but maybe this is the point in the video where I just leave some room for your imagination. I couldn't have done this without Shank Mods and Quincy, who's sitting behind the camera, and my family, and Larry, and Seamus, and Jordan, and of course, you. You took the time to watch me suffer in my basement, and thank you. I'll see you next time.
Oh yeah, one more quick thing. Thanks, Dad.
I used to play Pac-Man,
Okay.
but that was a separate standalone
Yeah.
machine.
In an arcade with people.
Well, I think it was in a convenience store in Oslo.